The Terraria Calamity mod is one of the biggest content mods for Terraria, adding new bosses, weapons, a pineapple. Yeah man, I don't know either. In addition to these items, the mod also adds an assortment of difficulties, such as Infernum. The goal of Infernum is to make your experience in this game an absolute living hell, comparable to buying a house on the west coast, but a little less severe. In addition to the absurd difficulties, the mod also adds a completely new class, and even expands on existing subclasses, such as True Melee. The whole objective of True Melee is to use melee weapons that are actually melee, meaning that in order to use the other effects from the weapons, you need to damage your enemies with the blade of your weapon, instead of simply shooting at a projectile like most swords. The reason I'm bringing these two things up is because I had the bright idea to combine the two, one of the hardest mods with one of the hardest classes to use. So that's why we're here. For the past month of my life, probably more depending on when I actually edit this, I have been documenting one of the worst ideas I've had in a while, all thanks to some very colorful pixels on the screen. Was this a good idea? No. Does it make for good content? I hope. Will I still have hair on my head by the end of this video? Only time will tell. Grab your popcorn, a drink, and maybe a therapist, because this is True Melee Infernum. I started this world just like any true American would, by destroying the environment and killing the natives. Afterwards, I began to terraform the land and shape it to meet my standards because the beauty of nature is simply not enough. After marking my territory on this future economic prospect, I decide to explore the world. I then forget about a mod I downloaded in December and promptly fall to my death. Absolutely brilliant. I've only been on this world for a mere 5 minutes and I'm already considering calling my therapist. After mysteriously appearing at world spawn again, I increased the property value of the forest by building a shed. With any luck, I shall be able to hide out here for the rest of my days. Away from responsibilities, away from people telling me, "Sir, you can't park here," whenever I very carefully insert my 1998 Honda according to the Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport baggage claim, and away from taxes. Hopefully the IRS will not find me here. After the grueling process of holding down left click, I labeled some chests. One for loot, one for mob drops, and one for potions. Night rolls around, and instead of going underground like a normal person, I decide to defend my land from the disgusting, good-for-nothing, foreign green slimes. Funnily enough, those are the exact same adjectives that my dad uses to describe me. I have yet to toggle on the Infernum difficulty, but I do unleash hell on my world soon. As the night goes on, I die several times, mostly to my own stupidity. Yeah, that laugh is gonna be in my dreams tonight. Anyways, back to dying. Hey, you heard that sound? That sound means that rage mode is ready to be activated. The red bar fills over time if you are around enemies, and once it's full, you can press a hotkey of your choosing to unleash a power boost of 35% for a short amount of time, clearing the area of any hooligans trying to mess with you. The following morning, the merchant moves in. At first, I can't tell if he's a spy, but fortunately, I discovered the ancient technique of coercion and he willingly complies. I force him to buy the things I don't need, unfortunately including the absolute beast of an umbrella I found. I also buy a piggy bank from him so I have a place to store my money in case the IRS actually does find me. Some time passes, then I find a mushroom biome, where surprisingly, I didn't find any road signs leading to Cincinnati. In the chest in the shrine, I find a fungal symbiote, which grows mushrooms wherever I walk, allowing me to control every resident within the San Francisco Bay Area. After diving deeper into the mushroom biome, I find a family of 4 minding their own business. After a few seconds, said family of 4 is now the Fox 5 News headline. I mine the heart crystals to increase my max HP and the chest for some accessories. I mine the heart crystals to increase my max HP and loot the chest for some accessories that'll help me in the early game. I also get sent out of orbit by a Shelly while frantically defending myself from a small bat, so that was nice. After respawning, I go back down to recover my lost money and no. At this point, I realized that the mace I picked up was not a true melee weapon, so after reducing the undead population even further, I sell the mace to the merchant for a surprisingly decent amount for early game. During another spelunking session, I find some more heart crystals along with one of the best items in the game. Nice. By complete accident, I found an underground entrance to the jungle. Any sane player would usually wait until they have better items until they go exploring in the jungle, but I need content so I decide to go in without armor. However, the entrance seems to be very short and doesn't lead anywhere, so I just wasted 10 seconds of both of our times, get pranked, GG, easy. Once I return to the surface, I remember that I barely have any crafting stations, so I pry an anvil from the merchant's hands and make a furnace. I crafted a topaz hook with some gems I found on the ground, unlocking a whole new technique for movement. Little did I know, however, that this was just another example of the illusion of freedom and nothing I do in this world actually matters. After continuing to blissfully ignore my problems, I crafted some tungsten armor to protect my vital organs from the dangers of this world, such as slimes, zombies, and my hubris. I get the idea to explore the rest of my world instead of staying underground the whole time, and I discovered one of those giant mahogany trees. But if you know what's down there, then you know that we're not gonna worry about it yet. A bit further up, I find a shrine for the Aquatic Scourge tablet in one of the most cinematic places possible, which is probably gonna be my computer wallpaper now. After taking some time to explore the world, I have a few things to report. To the left, we have Afghanistan. To the right, a child. Do with that information what you will. Also, I would like to point out that I just summarized the past 52 minutes of footage in the past 60 seconds, so you're welcome. I also found what I thought to be the entrance of a sword shrine, which has a 10% chance to give me a good true melee weapon for early game, but much to my dismay, it was one of the many shrines added by the Calamity mod. Afterwards, I went underground to search for my last life crystal, and I am now glad to say that after 3 hours of gameplay, I finally have a full health bar. After a lot of stalling, I finally try to progress, and I go to the underground desert, looking for a burnt sienna, an amazing early pre-hard mode sword, but unfortunately, I ended up getting a sword from the base game instead that ended up as nothing more than a boost in my bank account. In my sadness and desperation for a better weapon, I go to the Crimson, and fortunately, I get a rotted fork with the best modifier for it, so I'll definitely be using this for a while. Unfortunately, however, the IRS finally finds me and sends their accountants to ransack my house. In the chaos, the merchant dies, so either he really wasn't a spy or he was just expendable. Luckily for me, the rotted fork is very good at piercing government employees, so I survived the raid with minimal issues. After looting a planet, yeah, I take time to actually explore the jungle, which surprisingly wasn't a waste of my time. I found one of the accountants from the IRS raid nearby, so I kidnapped him and forced him to work for me. Now I have ransom if I ever miss my taxes again, which I most definitely will. I also made gold armor for a grand improvement of 1 defense to my tungsten armor. After upgrading my accessories, I decided it's finally time to actually start playing the game by summoning the one and only King Slat, and I'm dead. Okay, in my defense, actually I don't have a defense this time. I'm just bad at the game. Literally the next night I get my first blood moon and I get everything I need within the first 15 seconds, so thanks game. A few in-game days later it started raining slime again, so I took this opportunity to fight King Slime. The gelatinous mass of crushed hopes and dreams comes barreling towards me like a morbidly obese Walmart customer upon their mobility scooter, which turned out to be a more intimidating sight than I could ever imagine. Finally having tasted victory, I decided to challenge the Eye of Cthulhu, which normally isn't a hard boss, but I have the fortunate experience of fighting the eyeball of a literal god with a spear I found in the red cave, so I decided to use a different weapon. Psychological warfare. I hurl insults at the eye, reminding it of every failure of its life. Failures such as looking for his phone with the phone's flashlight, tripping on nothing while walking down the sidewalk, and calling the teacher mom. With these memories triggered, it teleports behind me, with teeth in place of where his pupil used to be. In his newfound rage, he throws what I assume to be more teeth at me, all of which miss, but I still manage to walk into them anyway. The eye summons smaller versions of itself to help in the fight. If they're anything like the children that I forced to work, they're underpaid, underfed, but crazy efficient. It then starts throwing up blood, either from itself or its previous victims. I finished the fight with around 3 minutes to spare before the morning came. Like Infernum players, Terraria bosses meant to be fought at night will fly away in shock and horror at the smallest hint of sunlight. The Sulphurous Sea event also started directly after stabbing Wheatley Incarnate, which allowed me to gather materials to craft the Basher. Guess what does more damage? A sword quite literally named the Blood Butcherer, or a really thick club that's most likely radioactive? It's the club, like, On my way back to the Sulphurous Sea to chop down some wood for the club, I killed a Thrasher, completely forgetting that it would spawn the child from earlier. Continuing the massacre, I went to the desert and summoned a Desert Scourge, ruler of the sands. I would like to mention that this fight was easier than the King Slime, which is basically just a bigger version of the blue slimes I've been dealing with ever since I made this world. The Scourge didn't drop the weapon I was looking for, so I reluctantly fought him again. After killing the dehydrated gummy worm for a second time, I got the weapon I was looking for. It's not particularly good, but it looks cool and that's all that matters. In the same surge of confidence, I traveled to the Sunken Sea to fight the giant clam, which somehow did more damage than the giant land snake. Okay, thanks game. I also decided to knock out the Torch God event, which wasn't as hard as I remember, but hey, it's like one of the only easy things we're gonna deal with this playthrough. After a little break from ruthlessly killing anything that moves, I go to the mushroom biome to fight Crabulon. Now let me ask you this, which fight do you think is harder? Exhibit A, the Desert Scourge, the literal Lord of the Sands who adapted to the harsh conditions of the desert, or Exhibit B, a really giant crab. It's the giant crab. A walking, breathing, probably conscious mushroom is a deadlier and more abhorrent creature than the banana I've had in my backpack since 5th grade. Someone tell me how that makes sense. It was the 4th of July when I recorded this part of the footage, and to celebrate my undying loyalty and pride for this country, I built an apartment complex in the woods. I love being an American. I made it to hell, and after massacring the local imp population, I crafted the Terror Spark boots, increasing my running speed from an astonishing 34 miles per hour to a whopping 35. Instead of fighting Crabulon again, I went to the Crimson biome and summoned the Brain of Cthulhu, which was nothing like I remember the fight being last time I played this mod. I feel like the amount of hallucinations in this fight are trying to warn me against these supplements I've been taking, but I'm not quite sure yet. It also took me longer than I would like to admit to realize that the lightning attack exists because the brain releases electrical signals when sending messages to the rest of the body. I think. With my club in one hand and my intestines in the other, I killed the brain. I could make so many jokes about the world being exponentially dumber now, but the mere existence of this video on my channel probably says enough. I mined some hellstone and crafted some new armor and the volcano, a very powerful sword. You know, back in my day, it was called the Fiery Greatsword. Sure, Grandpa, let's get you to bed. The Blade of Grass used to be true melee. That sounds wonderful. Terror Spark boots didn't exist. Okay, Grandpa, that's enough. With my new gear in hand, I fought Crabulon again, and this time I won. No. What, do you think I'm good at this game? Luckily, the next attempt actually results in a kill. Crabulon does have a true melee drop, but it's basically a watered down version of the fetid Backnax. During that fight, a meteorite landed in the Crimson biome. Being the authoritarian leader that I am, I'm obligated to remove it so the lower class can stop complaining. They keep mentioning life insurance claims and hospital bills. Pfft, silly poor people. I went back to the underworld for 2 reasons. 1, to get the Murasama, even though I won't be able to use it until much later in the game, and 2, for the Old Lord Claymore. But I completely forgot to farm for the Claymore, so we're gonna do that later. I went to the right side of my world to look for the Shimmer, to which I may or may not have spent 30 minutes doing so. I even tried watching a tutorial that didn't help at all, mostly because I'm very stupid. I eventually caved in and downloaded a mod that quite literally tells me where the Shimmer is via a compass bought from the traveling merchant. Taking a break from that, I went to the giant mahogany tree we saw earlier and attempted to make an arena for Queen Bee, until this happened. And this. I went back to searching for the Shimmer, which was right next to where I first dug. If I went left instead of down, I could have saved not that much time actually. I transmuted some items for the Vital Crystal, Ambrosia, and whatever the star thing is called. Some people may call it performance-enhancing drugs, and I'm one of them. I returned to Hell to farm for the Claymore, obtaining it almost instantly. In fact, I ended up getting 2, back to back. Having the Claymore will be very useful to us because it will allow us to lunge at enemies, cutting most fight times in half since we're not able to hit bosses most of the time. Now that we have the Claymore, we can take down the Perforators with ease. Using the revolutionary technique of holding down right-click, we can stop hurling insults at our enemies, instead hurling ourselves. After enough kamikaze attacks, the Perforator Hive summons its first worm thing. We need to target the worm because while it's alive, it increases the Hive's defense drastically, kinda like the Secret Service. In recent times, they haven't done the best defending, but you get the idea. Luckily, since I am a flying bomb at this time, the first worm doesn't stand much of a chance. After some more questionable decisions, the second Perforator worm spawns. It has multiple segments, but for some reason it doesn't split up after killing said segments, instead dying on the spot, just like my firstborn son after failing to fetch me another beer. After the third worm dies, the Hive enters its desperation phase, consisting of the same 3 attacks and a single roar soundbite until it dies. Very engaging. Wait, so really quick, editing bit about a game here as if it wasn't obvious already. Anyway, the Old Lord Claymore isn't exactly true melee, but it did say true melee on the weapon damage thing. Like in the game, in the weapon description, it does say true melee. Mostly because of the left click. The left click attack is true melee. But the right click, however, which was the main purpose of why I got the Claymore, is not true melee. Because it spawns projectiles as you use it. And in hindsight, actually not in hindsight, in current sight, I'm very stupid. I'm an idiot. That was not true melee, I just violated the challenge, I guess. I don't know, it's not that deep, but I could restart the world and not use the Claymore. But that was like it's September right now. I'm a very fast editor, trust me. And I started the world 2 months ago. And I don't want to have wasted 2 months. Like, granted, I do like the bare minimum every day on this video, but it's almost done by the time I'm recording this. I think, maybe, I hope, but yeah. Anyways, just go along with it. I'll like refight the bosses in part 2 or something. I don't know. Anyways, now that the Perforator Hive is dead, we can go to the skies to mine some aerolite ore. Unfortunately, since we already have molten armor, the only useful thing we can craft from the aerolite bars is the bundle of balloons, which for some reason I failed to record. My next target was Skeletron. Killing the funny bone man would grant us access to the dungeon, allowing us to get many crucial items that would help us in our journey, but more importantly, make us look cooler. However, there was one issue with this. Skeletron hits like a truck. Unfortunately for me, my usual strategy of bashing into the enemy until they are no longer breathing would not work here, as Skeletron does not possess a pair of lungs. I had to, against my will, actually play the game. In my panic, I jumped up right next to Skeletron's head, scattering my body into 72 different pieces across the map. On my second attempt, I found a new definition for the word boned, and on my third, I found out you can cheese this attack. Then I died. Fourth attempt, I considered calling my dad's therapist as well as my own so they could both figure out what was wrong with me. I changed my bundle of balloons for skyline wings, and that did nothing. Instead of continuing to suffer at the hands of Calcium Boy, I went to stake my claim in the tundra. I must have missed a few memos because apparently deer can now stand up on 2 legs and are now fighting back. I turned around after receiving my free taxidermy and tried going to the underground jungle, one of the only places left to conquer. I found an undiscovered Amazonian tribe and showed them some modern inventions such as gunpowder, tobacco, and smallpox. They refused my gifts, so due to their stubbornness and unwillingness to comply with orders, I demonstrated the uses of the modern inventions I listed before and how they can affect the human body. Now all the natives are gone, but in their place is a full arena with platforms and regen stations. I wonder how that got there. Flying towards me at the speed of a giant bee flew towards me. Unfortunately for me, this bee was different from the others. I noticed a small streak of blue hair and a horrible stench emanating from its mouth. This was no regular giant bee. This bee was a feminist. You would think a can of Raid would solve the issue, but not only would we need a comically large can of Raid, we would also need a comically large can of Axe body spray. It's not the best choice, but it's the most disposable one. The yellow Twitter user dashes towards me, rambling about minimal issues such as the gender pay gap and the rising prices of gasoline. Only one of those things truly matter, but that's not important right now. What is important right now, however, is survival. To overcome a beast of this magnitude, one must plug their nose, then their ears, and remember that being the loudest does not make you correct. This is probably a good time to mention that yes, I have been using buff potions the entire time. I'm using Fargo's Mutant mod, giving us 30 stack potions in cooperation with the 1988 100 meter dash booster program, basically meaning that as long as I have 30 of the same potion in the piggy bank, safe, or in my inventory, I'll have the effects from the potions permanently. The reason you can't see the buff icons is because I'm using a separate mod to hide the icons, brought to us straight from the US House of Representatives, taking up less space on my screen. From killing the queen bee so many times, I managed to obtain the Beekeeper sword, which looks weak but actually has around the same single target DPS as the old Lord Claymore. The way I introduced it may lead you to believe that this was a crucial upgrade for our journey, but it was in fact quite the opposite. After some minor improvements to my gear, I challenged Skeletron again. The only notable part about this fight is that I won, baby! Yeah! Now that Papyrus is dead, I could go to the dungeon where I got many important things, such as a Cobalt Shield, Muramasa, Shadow Key, Alchemy Table, a woman, the list goes on. I also crafted a tally counter with the Fargo's Mutant mod recipe, which was the final material I needed to craft the shelf on. Now I can text my friends, swap my favorite streamer, and continue to be a nuisance to society, all from the comfort of my own home. Continuing my looting spree, I went to the underworld and used my Shadow Key to unlock the Shadow Chest, where I found a Darklint Flame Lash, Hellwing Bow, Flower Fire, Hellwing Bow, Hellwing Bow, Flame Lash, Flower Fire, Sun Fury, Dark Lance! Finally! The last thing I need from the underworld was the Wayfinder, which is basically just a cooler potion of return, giving me the power to create portals from where I can teleport, of which I have strategically placed behind many important locations, such as Bohemian Grove, the United Nations offices, and Ba Sing Se. After getting back from the underworld, I wanted to test my new weapon, so I summoned Deerclops. The abominable cotton ball trapped me in a dark void, which would have been more frightening had I not been viewing this from a 3-dimensional perspective. The claws, imbued with the spirit of J. Cole, tried gripping me from all angles, signing the lyrics of that detestable song with their demonic fingers. The fight itself isn't hard, but thanks to my lack of an ability to dodge, I somehow managed to overcomplicate it and almost die. But I managed to find victory in the end. I also tried going after the apparent hardest boss in the game for the 5th time, and this time he just stood still. What? No resistance? No crying for help? Man, if I were a police officer, I would have been promoted to sheriff instantly. After the clan massacre, I went to the Corruption Sky Island to fight the Hive Mind, the counterpart to the Perforator Hive. These fights are basically the exact same, so I employed the same strategy of running into my enemies until they die, which works surprisingly well, even in the low gravity of the space layer. The next boss on my list was a Slime God, which isn't too hard of a fight, and it's even easier with the Claymore, the very well thought of and definitely true melee weapon, wink wink. The fight was going well. I killed the Crimson Slime with little to no brain function, and I continued the same strategy against the Corruption Slime. I thought the rest of the fight was going to be the same, but then I got too far from the other slime and he jumped to the sky, immediately despawning just like my pet hamster. I summoned the slimes again, and the Crimson Slime once again was getting brutally beaten up by my overflowing cowardice. You can't even call this a boss fight, it's more like a wild goose chase, but the goose is a terrorist and more aggressive than usual. The Crimson Slime finally realized how badly it was getting slimed and called in its older brother for help, which didn't do much except make the numbers on my DPS counter double in size. The slimes kept bouncing, and I kept holding right click. A very trivial task. Eventually, they both realized that their combined power wasn't nearly enough to defeat me and summoned their final form, Oldest Brother. The Flying Stress Ball decided its best course of action was to goop my entire arena and then slowly, painfully, and maniacally goop me once it finished. It tried ramming me, spilling its essence everywhere, but more worryingly, it increased its gooping intensity with every pass. It came at me with everything it had, but thanks to the modern invention of a purple spear, I deflected the potentially hazardous goop and claimed victory. I crafted a Crimson Altar because why not, I can do whatever I want, and combining the purified gel from the Slime God with several of my swords, I crafted the Knight's Edge, the best true melee weapon from pre-hard mode. Now that the Slime God was defeated, there was only one obstacle left, and that was containing the Crimson Biome. I only contained the one where I built my arena, because it's right next to my main base and my snow biome, two things I want to preserve. Now then, the real final challenge of hard mode, and this video, the wall of flesh. This is the ultimate test, one which will take all of our wits and the sturdiness of our keyboard to overcome. After the wall of flesh dies, a lot of things happen to the world. Hard mode begins, the astral meteor lands and creates the astral infection biome, and suddenly we're not so keen on playing the game anymore. Upon opening the treasure bag, I got a breaker blade and a warrior emblem. I mainly needed the emblem, but the sword is a nice addition. Now, I know there's an entire new part of the game right in front of me, but not only do I need to finish this video, no, that's the only reason. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, as not only does it help my channel, it also helps my ego. As the great Sun Tzu once said, the only things that matter in life are arbitrary numbers attached to an internet persona. If you want me to continue this series, make sure to let me know in the comments or, in my Discord. Anyways, with all that being said, I shall see you guys next time.